Hello, everyone. Today we will be talking about the TV program, The CW. Before we begin, I have to tell you something. I got into the CW before the superhero era, so I've seen the very worst of what CW has done in terms of writing. These dramas use a recurring narrative, which immorally reprehensible main characters are repeatedly showed sympathy. My criticism focuses on the morality of the narrative. The story determines whose suffering receives more attention, whose motives are explained, whose remorse matters, and whose victims are quickly forgotten. In the 100, Chancellor Jaha and the ARC leadership exemplify this problem. Their government makes authoritarian and utilitarian decisions that result in the mass murder of 320 innocent people, called the culling. Yet Jaha receives substantial sympathy from the writers, narrative, emotional music, and even the supporting characters. The CW writers try to emotionally manipulate you in that way. The audience sees his burden of leadership, his guilt, his willingness to sacrifice himself, and especially his grief over the apparent loss of his son, Wells. The narrative, therefore, creates an imbalance. Numerous ordinary people can die because of decisions made by those in power, while the personal suffering of one powerful individual receives considerably more characterization and emotional attention. His grief does not undo the suffering he helped cause, but it can make the audience emotionally reconnect with him. Sure, this woman Diana does betray Jaha later in the story, but that does not change the fact in this scene that the narrative tries to emotionally gaslight you into viewing mass murder as a peaceful and justified act. Let's think about that for a minute. Imagine putting this on paper as a writer. You must be psychopathic to moralize this kind of thing in a story and frame it as heroic. The Diana Sidney conspiracy complicates this further. Opposition to Jaha's administration arises partly from legitimate grievances. People have been deceived, sacrificed, and subjected to an authoritarian political system. Tor Lemkin, whose daughter died during the culling, has an especially understandable reason for hating the administration. However, the narrative will distort a character's traits to appear manipulative and evil to get you to side against the heroes. The Unity Day bombing changes the moral balance. Whatever legitimate grievances exist against Jaha's administration, Diana's faction crosses into indiscriminate political violence. The bombing kills and injures people who are not personally responsible for the culling and is intended to destabilize the government. Once the opposition becomes associated with terrorism and attempted seizure of power, Jaha can occupy a moral position. It's like telling the audience, "See everyone, I am the hero, protecting innocent people from terrorists." Instead of primarily being the authoritarian leader whose decisions contributed to mass death, he becomes the leader being attacked by extremists. That is when things get extremely murky morally, when you write characters like this, to justify any evil and flip it, so they end up as the hero in this. That transition is enormously important for audience psychology. The facts about Jaha's previous actions have not disappeared. What has changed is the immediate dramatic question. Earlier, viewers can ask, how can Jaha justify sacrificing these people? During the conspiracy, the story encourages a different question. Can Jaha stop Diana before she causes something even worse? Merely changing the immediate threat can move the same character from morally questionable authority figure to sympathetic protagonist without actually resolving the original moral problem. Suppose the series spent an entire episode inside Tor's home after the culling. His daughter asking where her mother is, Tor struggling to answer her, memories of his wife, his anger when he sees Jaha speaking about sacrifice, and his gradual realization that the political leadership responsible will continue governing. Then imagine Jaha receiving comparatively little interiority. The same political events could feel radically different to the viewer. This creates what could be called a false moral reset through escalation. Character A commits something terrible. Character B responds to that injustice with something even more immediately horrifying. The narrative then concentrates on stopping Character B. Character A consequently begins looking reasonable by comparison, even though Character B's wrongdoing never actually absolved Character A. That does mean the 100 is consciously telling viewers that Jaha was morally correct. That means the writers are saying, Jaha good, rebels bad. The CW deliberately enjoys writing evil main characters and justifying their actions, and forgets about those actions the more the story goes on.